He was known as the Man of Thoughts, a title whispered, never spoken directly. He saw the darkness in others, felt it resonate with his own, not a victim but a connoisseur of the macabre symphony playing in every human heart. And then, he met.
He sensed her before he saw her. A disturbance in the force, a discordant note in the city's hum. She was beautiful, undeniably so, but it was the darkness behind her eyes that drew him in. Like him, she was a predator, but what she hunted, he couldn't yet discern.
Her name was Seraphina, a name that rolled off the tongue like velvet, yet held the sharp edge of a blade. She moved through the world with a confidence that bordered on arrogance, her beauty a weapon she wielded with expert precision.
He, Julian, the man of thoughts, was drawn to her like a moth to a flame. He recognized her darkness, saw his own reflection in her eyes. She intrigued him, challenged him in a way no one ever had. This was no ordinary game of cat and mouse. This was a dance of two predators, each vying for control.
Their initial encounters were electric, a spark igniting in the shadows where they first met. The air between them crackled with an intensity that was almost palpable, a silent promise of the dark journey they were about to embark on together. Charged with unspoken desires and a mutual understanding of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface. They spoke in riddles, their conversations a labyrinth of hidden meanings and subtle cues. Each word was a piece of a puzzle, a step deeper into the abyss of their shared psyche, their words laced with double meanings and veiled threats, a dance of intellect and emotion. The tension between them was a living thing, a beast that thrived on their mutual need for control and dominance. It was a game of chess played in the dark, each move calculated, each response measured.
He fed off her energy, a predator drawn to the light of her ambition and the shadows of her insecurities. Her need for control was a mirror of his own desires, a reflection of the power struggle that defined their relationship. Her need for control mirroring his own. She was a force of nature, a storm contained within a fragile human form. Her every move was calculated, every glance a weapon in her arsenal. She was a queen in her own right, ruling over a kingdom of shadows and secrets. He knew she was a narcissist, her world revolving around the axis of her own desires. She was the sun in her own universe, and everyone else was merely a planet caught in her gravitational pull. Her beauty was a mask, her charm a weapon, and her love a tool for manipulation. Her world revolving around the axis of her own desires. She was a master of her own fate, a puppet master pulling the strings of those around her. But he was different. He saw through her facade, saw the cracks in her carefully constructed persona. And he, a dark empath, was drawn to the challenge of unraveling her, of seeing behind the carefully constructed facade. He was a hunter, and she was his prey. But this was no ordinary hunt. It was a battle of wits, a test of wills, a dance of darkness that neither could resist, of seeing behind the carefully constructed facade. He wanted to peel back the layers, to see the true face behind the mask. He was fascinated by her complexity, by the duality of her nature. She was both predator and prey, both queen and pawn in their twisted game.
This was a dance of darkness, an intricate ballet of power and vulnerability. Each step was a move in their game, each touch a test of their resolve. They were both players and pieces, both masters and slaves to the dance that bound them together. An intricate ballet of power and vulnerability. Their dance was a symphony of shadows, a melody of secrets and lies. It was a performance for an audience of two, a private show that only they could understand. Each movement was a declaration, each glance a promise of what was to come, each step, each word, a calculated move in their twisted game. They were locked in a battle of wills, a struggle for dominance that neither could afford to lose. It was a game of shadows, a dance of darkness, and the stakes were higher than either of them could have imagined.
Their relationship was a whirlwind of passion and manipulation. He reveled in her need for admiration, using his understanding of her insecurities to pull her strings.
She, in turn, exploited his empathy, using his desire to please to keep him off balance.
He knew her games, saw through her carefully constructed facade, yet he found himself drawn deeper into her web. The thrill of the game, the knowledge that he was the only one who truly saw her, was intoxicating. He was playing with fire and he knew it, but the burn was addictive. Their fights were legendary, fueled by ego and a shared thirst for control. Each argument was a battle, a clash of titans where neither was willing to back down. The room would fill with the sound of their raised voices echoing off the walls like a storm. Friends and neighbors would often hear the commotion, wondering how two people could be so passionately entwined in both love and conflict. They tore each other down with words that cut like knives, only to come together again in a passionate embrace that bordered on the savage. It was a cycle they couldn't escape, a dance of destruction and desire. Their love was a tempest, wild and uncontrollable, leaving them both breathless and bruised. Yet, in those moments of reconciliation, there was a raw, primal connection that neither could deny. It was as if the intensity of their fights only fueled the fire of their passion.
He saw the cracks in her armor, the vulnerability she desperately tried to hide. Beneath her fierce exterior, he glimpsed the fragility that lay within. It was in the way her eyes would sometimes soften, or how her voice would waver ever so slightly. He knew that behind her defensive posture was a heart that had been hurt too many times. And in those moments, he felt a surge of protectiveness, a desire to shield her from the world and from herself.
And she saw his darkness, the emptiness that gnawed at his soul. She recognized the haunted look in his eyes, the way he would sometimes drift into a world of his own. It was a darkness that mirrored her own, a void that they both tried to fill with their tumultuous relationship. She knew that his bravado was a mask, hiding the pain and loneliness that he carried within. And in her own twisted way, she loved him for it, for the brokenness that made him so achingly human. She used it against him, twisting his empathy, his need to feel, into a weapon. She knew how to push his buttons, how to make him doubt himself and question his worth. It was a cruel game, one that she played with a masterful hand, but even as she manipulated him, there was a part of her that hated herself for it. She saw the pain in his eyes, the way he would flinch at her words, and it tore at her heart. Yet, she couldn't stop, couldn't break free from the cycle of hurt and healing. He knew he should walk away, that this dance was leading them both to the precipice, but he couldn't bring himself to break free. The thought of leaving her was unbearable, like tearing out a piece of his own soul. He stood on the edge, looking down at the abyss, knowing that one more step could mean the end. But the pull of their connection was too strong, the bond too deep. And so, he stayed, caught in the whirlwind of their love and pain, hoping that somehow, they could find a way to save each other from the fall. The psychological toll of their relationship was immense. He felt himself becoming colder, more detached, his empathy a flickering flame threatening to be extinguished.
She in turn became more demanding, more reliant on his validation to fuel her insatiable ego.
The silence between them became heavier, laden with unspoken accusations and the weight of their shared darkness. He was a man of thoughts, but even he couldn't decipher the labyrinthine maze of their relationship. They were trapped, two predators caught in a cage of their own making. The ending, when it came, was both inevitable and unexpected. It was as if the universe had conspired to bring them to this very moment, a moment that had been written in the stars long before they even met. The air was thick with tension, and every second felt like an eternity, a final confrontation fueled by years of resentment and unspoken truths. Words that had been left unsaid for too long now erupted like a volcano, each one more hurtful than the last. Their voices echoed in the dimly lit room, bouncing off the walls and shattering the fragile peace that had once existed between them. He saw the fear in her eyes, the fear of being truly seen, truly known. It was a fear that mirrored his own, a fear that had kept them both trapped in a cycle of pain and misunderstanding. Her eyes, wide and glistening, told a story of vulnerability and desperation, a story that he had never taken the time to understand. And in that moment, he realized the depth of his own darkness. It was a darkness that had been growing inside him for years, fed by his own insecurities and regrets. He saw himself reflected in her eyes, and for the first time, he understood the impact of his actions. The weight of his own mistakes came crashing down on him, and he felt a profound sense of remorse.
He walked away, leaving her standing there alone with her reflection. The silence that followed was deafening, a stark contrast to the chaos that had just unfolded. She stood there, staring at her own reflection, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The room felt colder, emptier, as if the very essence of their relationship had been sucked out, leaving nothing but a void. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew he couldn't exist in her orbit any longer. The path ahead was uncertain, shrouded in darkness, but he felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time in a long time, he felt free, unburdened by the weight of their toxic relationship. He walked away, each step taking him further from the life he had known and closer to an uncertain future. Their relationship was a toxic symphony, a haunting melody that would forever echo in the chambers of his heart. It was a song that had been playing for too long, each note a reminder of the pain and suffering they had endured. The broken heart locket, a symbol of their fractured love, lay on the floor, a silent testament to the end of their story. He was the man of thoughts, forever marked by the darkness he had embraced. As he sat alone in the dark room, he couldn't help but reflect on the choices he had made, the paths he had taken. The shadows danced around him, a constant reminder of the darkness that had become a part of him. But in that darkness, he also saw a glimmer of hope, a chance for redemption. He knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but he was ready to face it, one step at a time.